And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes life just throws situations at us. Sometimes it throws us into positions where we have no choice but to accept change into our lives, where we have no choice other than to pay attention to what is actually going on and realize the power we have to control these situations. No one really controls your life but you, folks. I mean, very often you may think someone controls your life, but really what you're being offered is an opportunity to find yourself and find your own power. I've always managed through holding my head high to be able to get through most situations. Well, not always. I mean, I was as messed up as everybody else when I was younger. I mean, I was certainly no angel. I don't pretend that I've always been as aware as I am and that I've always lived my life the way I do now. I was a musician for a long time. I was indulgent. I was self-centered. I had very much of a victim mentality for a long time. I thought the world was against me. I thought I'd never fit in anywhere. I didn't fit in. I was different to everybody else. And I was quite literally my own worst enemy because of the feelings of inadequacy that I had. It was a long time before I realized that these feelings came from society and that what I was actually running through was programs. These are feelings and emotions and responses that had been programmed into me. And this is a pretty big thing, folks, because I was born awake and aware. When I was 4 years old, I was questioning reality. I couldn't figure it out. I didn't understand why it was the way it was. And I started really researching and investigating things when I was about 8. And even with that background and even with that knowledge, society managed to program me. I got programmed without even knowing that I was being programmed. And it's pretty obvious that I was programmed, folks, because like feeling inadequate, this is a program. Feeling that you're not as good as everybody else, this is a program. The trick is to know that. The trick is to know that you are as good as everybody else, you're the same as everybody else, and if you're thinking that you're not, then what you're doing is running a program. And don't get me wrong, folks, when I'm saying you're the same as everybody else, I'm not saying you're a clone and you need to think that way and we need to be uniform. What I'm saying is that we all come from the same source. And I've explained on countless shows how you can be one with everything else and yet completely unique and individual in your own right at the same time, because that's how reality works. If it didn't work that way, reality wouldn't function. It has to work that way. So don't get me wrong when I say you're all the same, but you are. You're just as good, you're just as worthwhile, you're just as unique, and you're just the same as everybody else. It's just that you're programmed to not know this, to not think this, to always view yourself as a victim, and you're programmed to think in certain ways. And it's a great thing now that people are beginning to wake up to this, but that's mainly because it's now in their face. And unfortunately, one of the waking up processes I'm seeing is that people are realizing it usually when some crisis happens in their lives and it causes the programming to break down. And I'm seeing that very much with a lot of people. Earlier I was mentioning the garden we have outside and the woofers that we have, the workers that come and work on the gardens. One of the workers out there at the moment has just lost his house, a $240,000 home that he built himself. It's now owned by the bank. He took it to court and he couldn't believe the lack of regard for his well-being that the court had, and how willing it was to hand his possessions over to the banksters. It was a real eye-opening for him. And now he is working here on the garden and he's receiving unemployment benefits. And he readily admits that just a few weeks ago, he would look at people who are receiving unemployment benefits and he would view them with disdain. And he would think, you're just a no-hoper, mate. Why don't you go and get a job? And then suddenly he was put in a position where he was homeless and he lost his job, and now he's receiving benefits, and he readily admits that it's a different world. And he's shocked at how easily society has discarded him. And this is what society does, folks. It creates this mindset in people where we judge others if they're in a position that's worse than ourselves. We look at poor people and we see them as a threat to our safety. We see them as no-hopers. We see them as people who never amounted to anything because of their own inadequacies. But really, they're very often people that have been discarded by society, and very often they've been discarded because they did not know how to stand in their power. And again, folks, this is a program. So even though we are responsible for what happens in our lives, often we don't even understand the fact that we are responsible for our lives because we're programmed to think differently. And that's what I've been trying to present to people on these radio shows. Mainly, that's been the main objective of everything I've tried to do since even beginning these broadcasts, is to help people comprehend and discover the power that exists within them. Because I believe that once we discover this power, we can have powerful communities, and powerful communities have the ability to change the world. Indeed, one person has the ability to change the world if they have an idea whose time has come. And I think the idea whose time has come is the idea that we are powerful, the idea that we finally have an opportunity for freedom, and all we have to do to gain this freedom is to understand the power that we have. And this is the power of love, the power of respect, the power of empathy, the power of service to creation. This is the power that we all have within our hearts. All we have to do is know how to stand in that power. And standing in your power, I mean, it's something that you know inside. I mean, I've talked about this so often. For me, my power is knowing who and what I am. It's knowing what I come from. It's knowing that I come from the divine stuff of the universe. It's knowing that I'm completely unique. Like, say, for example, you go to court and the judge tells you must be subject to the laws of your peers. Well, couldn't you then theoretically ask the judge if you can be identified by your DNA? And if the court replies, yes, you can, well, then you could say, well, then, according to your own medical and biological evidence, I am completely unique, and therefore I have no peers. I mean, hey, it's your system, and this is what the evidence indicates to be true, so if you're claiming otherwise, please show me proof of claim, and where do we go from here? And that's just one example of how to think about these things, folks. I mean, there's so many examples of how to work through this legal system, but it all comes down to knowing who and what you are. That's what it's about. And there's no one who can really write any templates for you, because no one can know every response you're going to receive from judges or lawyers or whatever. It's up to you to know that you are a flesh and blood, sentient being, divine under God, whatever you perceive God to be, and that no one has any power over you. And realizing that the people that you're dealing with are just people, the same as you, and if you can ask them the right questions, you can usually find your way through things, but you have to be able to hold your head high. And the way you can really do this, folks, is to know who and what you are. And I know that might sound trite to people. Oh, you're always telling me to know who and what I am, but what do you mean? And to be honest, folks, I've done whole shows where I've spoken about the divine stuff of the universe. I made a film called The Awakening, where I really attempted to help people understand the power of their feelings and emotions. If you still don't know who and what you are, perhaps you could go back and revisit that film, or perhaps some of the earlier radio shows I did in 2009 or 2010. Remember back in 2009, I was very much focused on energy and very much focused on people's emotions and how we interact with reality. It kind of got to the stage where I was banging the same drum for so long that I figured I'd better change topics, and so I've sort of moved on to a lot of other stuff since then. But the information is there if you wish to go back and revisit some of those old shows and some of those old films that I made. I mean, it's knowing who you are, folks, and there is no template that I can give you. A lot of people write to me and they ask me for templates. I've got a fine, I've got this, I've got that. Can you tell me how to free myself from this debt? And all I can really say to them is that you need to know who and what you are. And you need to know who and what the people in the court are. You need to know who and what the system is. And all of this information exists inside of you if you know who you are. Like I said, I know what I come from. I know that I'm just a frequency. I know that life is just an experience, and that when this curtain falls, then a new door will open. And it's always been like that. The really important thing is what I do with the experience while I'm here. And I believe a lot of what this experience is a journey of self-discovery. Of course it is, because all of the information that you gather through your life, the only thing that you can be 100% certain about is yourself. It's who you are and what you did with the time that was given to you. That's really the only thing you can know for certain, that you can be a 100% authority on, is yourself. It just sometimes takes us a good many years to realize this, because we're always searching for our life in something that is external to ourselves. We're searching for happiness, we're searching for fulfillment, we're searching for success in things which are external to ourselves. But what is important is ourselves, because that is who and what we are. That is us, that is our experience, and that is the only thing that we can ever know for certain. But we often miss that because we're too busy being distracted, trying to live up to the expectations and yardsticks that society has set up for us, and we're always attempting to operate within fictional paper-based parameters rather than operating from our heart and living our life in service to creation. And I absolutely believe that that is the purpose of life. That is the way through life anyway. Perhaps not the purpose, but that is certainly the way through life, is to live your life in service to creation. And when you do this, yourself becomes apparent. You find yourself by default. When you can respect yourself and you can respect others, then you find yourself by default. But very often that respect for yourself is the hard thing. See, that's why we judge others, folks, is because we lack respect for ourselves. We see someone as a threat to ourselves, and so we judge them, we repel them from our life, we get that feeling away from us, because that feeling that we get from those people is a threat to how we perceive ourselves. And these are all programs, folks. They're all programs. We're programmed to judge ourselves by the way we measure ourselves up to the parameters that have been set there and put there for us by society. It's very, very clever. It's like I was saying before about the man who recently lost his house and now he's on unemployment benefits, and it's changed his perspective completely. But what has become apparent to him, I was talking to him, I said, when you notice this, you notice the feeling that you had for people who were in a state of shortage. You viewed them with disdain, and yet now you are one of those people. And you can see, because of the attitude that you had for these people, why people who are still affluent and people who are still in a state of security have now viewed you with disdain. And you can see how it's a program. And this program has been put in place in order to be able to discard members of society gradually. More and more people get discarded, and as soon as they're thrown on the pile, they're forgotten about by the rest of society, because society is programmed to think that way. All these things are programs, folks. But now that you've been discarded, you have an opportunity to be aware of the system and to start working to implement positive change, to help other people become aware of the system, to change the system from what it is back to one that supports mankind. And you could also look on the bright side. I mean, you have an opportunity for a fresh start. You have an opportunity to lose your attachment to possessions, because you don't really possess anything. You don't really own anything. You're only actually here for a little while. And when you die and that curtain goes down and a new door opens, you're going to go into that new doorway naked with nothing. And you're going to have to start again. You're going to be even leaving physicality. So if during your time in this reality you are too caught up in possessions, too caught up in physical sensations, then you're going to find yourself in a very difficult spot when you enter that new world, when you enter that new doorway. Because this reality provides us with physical sensation. It provides us with physical objects and things that we can accumulate around us to build a ivory tower for ourselves that we perceive to be ourselves.